safely this evening, Lord. Lord, I just ask you to be with this meeting, Lord. Let it be conducted civil. And for the citizens of Cumberland, not each his own personal agenda, Lord. Lord, I just ask you to be with the city of Cumberland, Lord, for there's greater things that are still to come in the city of Cumberland. Lord, just help us to work together for the citizens that elected us, Lord. Lord, I ask you to watch over the city workers, the city police officers, and the legislative and executive bodies of the city, Lord. Lord, I ask you to be with our servicemen that are protecting our freedoms, Lord. And I ask you to be with each and every sick person and each and every prayer request out there, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray and ask these things. Amen.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call vote.
Barrett.
Here.
Elliott.
Here.
Bowyer.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Haynes. Raleigh.
Here.
Dixon.
Here. Okay, the first item on the agenda is to read, review, and vote to accept or reject the agreed order file number Department of Water 33280, Energy and Environmental Cabinet. On January the 17th, with Mr. Boggs, we had a telephone conference with the judges from the Energy and Environmental Cabinet. We informed the judges that the rock had been disposed of and that the testing had proved the sites to be mercury-free. No citations were issued in this matter. The only remaining item to be resolved was the recovery cost that the EPA had paid for moving the rock from the filtering basin to the storage site, which was $7,495. We have tentatively agreed to reimburse the EPA this amount paid in $200 increments, commencing in July. This is a satisfactory agreement with the EPA and will end our problems with the rock. Now, each of you were given a copy of this agreed order on January the 27th. We now need a motion to accept this agreed order as written and recommended by our attorney and the Energy and Environmental Cabinet.
While you're thinking about who's going to make the motion, I'll say that this, you should have the invoices. This was actually out-of-pocket money paid from the emergency fund. So what you're in effect doing is reimbursing the emergency fund for any other cleanup, toxic waste cleanup that may need to be reimbursed throughout the state. There are no penalties, there's no fine, but they need to be reimbursed with what was the out-of-pocket for the actual coming on site and doing the cleanup at the time.
I make a motion that we accept the agreed order as presented by the Energy and Environmental Cabinet and return the signed documents immediately.
Okay, we have a motion made by David Dixon.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Seconded by Carla Barrett. Now we have discussion. Comments or discussions, questions or anything you'd like to?
Are you saying, Parker, that we're not going to get fined for moving the gravel to the VA park? Is that what you're saying?
The fine that was levied, the fines that were levied against this initial contamination back in the, what year was it?
2003
is when it started.
2003 is when it happened, and the mercury spill that occurred then. There were proposed fines and proposed penalties and for that, and for anything around that incident, they are waiving those and giving up those fines just to be reimbursed for what they spent, and you have an invoice of what they spent on that back at other than the fact that some of it went from there to there, it was not addressed directly in this action that was in the DOW 33280.
But it was, in fact, some of it was moved from the sewage plant to the memorial park.
Well, it was. They have concerns about that, but there's been no fine levied on that. And that site's been tested, and it's clear. And the same people who are involved in this would be having the oversight of that.
And we may still get something on that that we don't know as of yet.
The idea, I can't tell you what's coming down tomorrow, but I can say that for this incident, this agreement should put the whole thing to bed.
Any further discussion, questions? Not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Graham,
Yes.
Raleigh,
No.
Dixon.
Yes.
Large majority vote is
Five
ordinance
yes,
is agreed, yes.
one no, and
So the agreed order will be approved. Mr. Boggs, I guess we could sign it, because it's got to be sent right back
It's
in.
for you to sign and
And,
I'll get you a copy of that.
okay. I don't have, here's the invoice.
Yeah, I don't need that.
Thank you. Well, that's the top sheets.
The motion.
Okay, I guess we can just move right on. Feel free to, that goes with that.
give it to Parker.
Yeah, I don't need it, you can keep it.
Just keep that with you. Just keep that. The next item on the agenda is read, review, and vote to accept the grant for purchasing two 2012 work trucks for the city of Cumberland. Now, the city is in desperate need of service work trucks in our water, sewer, and maintenance departments. We only have 3 vehicles that can be depended upon to do the jobs that they are needed for. These 3 vehicles are in very poor condition with excessive miles and could break down at any time. We had an opportunity to obtain 2 new work trucks with a grant which was projected to purchase an SUV for the police department. Now, the police department has 5 relatively new police cars, all of which are maintained in an A1 condition, and we are still paying on 2 of them. Now, based upon the needs of the city and to ensure that we would have usable vehicles in our water, sewer, and maintenance departments, I requested the grant be changed to authorize the city to purchase 2 2012 Chevrolet Silverado 4-wheel drive work trucks. Each truck will cost $20,647. We will receive a federal grant from Congressman Al Rogers' office in the amount of $30,970. Our match to this grant will be $10,324. I need a motion.
Can you give me those figures again, please? How much it's gonna cost for each vehicle? I couldn't get them all wrote down fast enough.
$20,647 for each vehicle.
And the grant amount was how much?
$30,970, leaving a balance for our matching fund of $10,324. Now, we had the public hearing, and we discussed it with all the people involved. Police department was naturally, they want the SUV, and we would like to have them have the SUV, but right at this time, the priority is getting two good work trucks that we can depend on. Because all we have is junkers in there.
Did the grant people give us permission to use it for work trucks instead of police vehicles?
Yes, it is.
You got that in writing?
That's what you're doing right here now.
That's what I'm saying, is who authorized it to be used?
The rural development.
Do you have that in writing?
Yeah. It's all, it's right here, ready to go.
I had Mr. Parton call me from rural development about that and the paperwork on it, and sent me some to sign as having, and that was my understanding from talking with Tom Parton at rural development, that it was for the water, yes, water distribution system work trucks.
But it started out as a police car grant?
It was, there was paperwork for a police car grant that was changed. From a police car grant to water truck, based upon the, as the mayor said, the need for a water truck. Water maintenance trucks.
We thought of
Instead of,
Excuse me.
I mean, you giving us a price for vehicles, do we not have to do some kind of bidding or something to come up with some vehicles? I mean, you're already giving me a price for vehicles.
We should get 3 quotes.
No, this is a state.
It's for applying for the grant. I mean, you really can't bid, you can't bid until you're approved for the grant, and they haven't approved it yet. So after it's approved, then you go through whatever process is required for the grant. You may recall, I don't know the meeting, but there was a talk about a SUV needing, that the police needed.
Yeah, for winter time and stuff. I remember that well, yeah.
SUV, and it to be fully equipped.
Mhm.
The cost of it was 40-some, I forgot exactly, it was $40-some thousand for a 4-wheel drive for winter. And of course, this is roughly the same money, but for 2 pickups, 2 trucks. So,
And they're four-wheel drives, right? Yeah.
except in they're pickups,
Yeah.
and not a fully like an SUV, like a Tahoe or Explorer, whatever that might be.
So this is just a standard price for a vehicle. We may be able to get them cheaper
No,
than.
these vehicles normally would run $27,870 each. The vehicle we selected and they agreed to buy for us is $20,647, but that vehicle would normally cost $27,870 through the state bidding.
Where are they coming from?
These are prices that are already under state contract.
Okay, all right. I guess that's what my question was, in roundabout way.
Bob Cook Chevrolet, 4144 Bardstown Road, and they'll be delivered to us.
Make a motion that we approve the application for federal assistance to obtain funding for the purpose of purchasing 2 new 2012 Chevrolet Silverados 4-wheel drive work trucks for the city of Cumberland.
Okay, we have a motion, here a second.
I'll second.
further discussion or questions?
I would have really, before we did this, like saw something on, written down about the condition of each vehicle and all.
It's right here, be glad to.
And I'd like to send something that said it was okay to change from a police grant to
That's right.
a work vehicle.
That's what you just did. If you vote to do that, that's what you're doing. And here's you can look at the specifications and everything right here now. And,
Okay, what about the money for our part, for a grant?
we've got,
I mean, we may have it now, but is that gonna cause
we
our,
already committed it. We've already committed to the people that's given us the grant money that we will have the money available.
but what's that doing to our budget?
It's structured within our operating capital, but our budget still remains intact. But there's no,
What have you got showing us that it'll be intact?
I think we gave you production reports, well,
That's another subject.
That's,
yeah.
I know they need the vehicles, you know, bad. Somebody was talking about that at a couple of meetings ago or so, about we only had one truck that was working or something. If I remember, I could be wrong about that.
Well, trucks are old and
Well,
got access to
I'm gonna make a statement. Every time I go by the water plant, there's 5 or 6 vehicles sitting there.
some of them not running.
Well, why are they sitting there?
They can't afford to get them.
I see them out running all the time, and
I guess my question, I mean, why have we still got all that junk if they're junk?
That's really their headquarters there at the water plant right now. That's where they gather to start work and get the job assignments and go out in the field. And then the ones that you do see out on the roads and things are either going to or from water lines. Like they have every day they have different places, different tasks that they have to perform, and they have to travel to and from the water plant. They got their supply shop is at the water plant for all the parts and pipe fittings and things of that nature. They have to go up there and get their materials depending on what size that they need and everything for different job sites. But, and granted, they are the vehicles are parked there after hours and sometimes during hours. Any additional questions or comments? If there's no further comments, we'll have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Bowyer,
Yes.
Graham,
yes.
Raleigh,
No.
and Dixon.
Yes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the ordinance which was sent to us as a sample from the State Department of Building and Code Enforcement. And they have requested that the city adopt a statewide uniform building code as promulgated in Kentucky Administrative Regulation 7120 and Kentucky Administrative Regulation 7125 by the Board of Housing, Building, and Construction.
Who sent it?
And David will read that.
Who sent it?
Pardon?
Who sent it?
State Department of Building, Code Enforcement. And that's, let me give you their address here. Division of Building Code Enforcement, 101 C Hero Road, that's SEAHERO ROAD, Suite 100, Frankfort, Kentucky. Did y'all get a copy of this?
Yeah.
No, I
You didn't
didn't,
get-
I'm not speaking in my name.
40601 is the zip code. That's the letter of instructions that the ordinance, sample ordinance was attached to. So,
We didn't get a copy of that letter that they sent you.
you have,
He said that might be in your box. See if Carolyn's got anything in her box, see one.
no, just have a,
Yeah, no, that ain't it.
We pass that down to,
Okay, I think you got something in your too, Charles.
pass that to Carol.
Thank you.
just, yeah, make a
I
copy.
need mine.
You did? I'm picking that up.
Make enough of it.
Okay, so you don't have to copy that, just the letter at the top, just this right here.
While they're making a copy of that, we can go ahead and have the first reading of the ordinance. Same time.
An ordinance relating to the adoption of the Uniform Statewide Building Code as proclamated in 815 KRA 7120 and 815 KRA 7125 by the Board of Housing, Buildings, and Construction of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Whereas KRS 198B.0601 requires that all buildings constructed in Cumberland shall be built in compliance with the Uniform State Building Code as adopted by the Board of Housing, Buildings, and Construction. And whereas KRS 198B.0601 authorizes any city, county, or urban county government to require by ordinance permits, inspections, and certificates of occupancy for single-family dwellings. And whereas KRS 196B.06011 requires the local government to employ or contract for or with electrical inspection services. And whereas KRS 198B.06016 authorizes each local government to establish a schedule of fees which are designed to cover the cost of the service performed but not to exceed it. Now therefore it be ordained by the legislative body of the City of Cumberland, Commonwealth of Kentucky. Section 1, Adoption of the Kentucky Building Code. That the Kentucky Building Code, proclamated in 815 KRA 7120 and the Kentucky Residential Code, proclamated in 815 KAR 7125 by the Board of Housing, Building, and Construction, Commonwealth of Kentucky, are hereby adopted in full as an ordinance of the City of Cumberland in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, as it set out at length herein. That a copy of said Kentucky Building Code is on file in the office of the Harlan County Clerk, and the clerk shall at all times keep a copy of said building code for reference. That an attest copy of this ordinance shall be transmitted to the office of Housing, Buildings, and Construction of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Section 2, Designated Enforcement Officer. That the Code Enforcement Board shall be designated as the local enforcement agency for said Kentucky Building Code. All building code inspections shall be performed by the person certified by the Kentucky Office of Housing, Buildings, and Construction. All electrical inspections shall be performed by the state certified electrical inspector specifically approved by this jurisdiction. Section 3, Building Inspection Program. That pursuant to KRS 198B.0608, a building inspection program is hereby established in Cumberland for the application to all buildings. Local jurisdictions may adopt by ordinance detached single-family dwellings as provided in the adoption codes. Section 4, Permits and Fees. That the fees for permits and inspections shall be as provided for in the attached schedule. Section 5, Inconsistent ordinances repealed. That all ordinances or parts of ordinance in conflict with are to the extent of such conflict are hereby repealed. Section 6, effective date. But this ordinance shall take effect and be in full force when passed, published, and recording according to law. Date of first reading, January 31st, 2012.
Any further discussion on that? We'll just, it'll be laid by until our next regular scheduled council meeting. We'll have the, first and second reading in both. We will have to hire a building inspector, a certified electrician. That's one of the things that we'll have to include in our budget. I think it's paid for by the people.
It'd be paid, the compensation, as I understand it from the ordinance I just heard and saw, his compensation would be based upon, or her compensation would be based upon the fee collected for the inspection. I don't know that it'd be a separate, but
So basically, every time they,
$15, $25, whatever it's set at,
each time they come out,
to do it, they get.
there's different levels in those inspections.
Right.
You got your framing level, or where your foundation level, framing level.
And so,
It gets complicated and expensive real quick.
so that's where the fee for inspection is what it's paid in inspection. A lot of places price that part-time.
Fourth item, we're just moving on. The fourth item, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session for purpose of making an appointment.
I'd like to make a
Mayor,
motion that we go into
I
a
would
closed
like to say-
executive.
Okay.
You want me to finish, or?
Yes,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
make a motion that we go into a closed executive session for the purpose of discussing the possible appointment of an individual as authorized under provisions of KRS 61.810, subparagraph 1F, and the reason for the closed session is to comply with regulatory statutes.
Concerning that might lead to the appointment
Mm-hmm.
of an individual.
Right, yes, concerning, yeah.
According to KRS 61.810, this does not meet the qualifications, so if we do this, as written on the agenda, we'll be having the illegal meeting.
Mr. Parker, what do you think about that?
I have it right here.
When I saw the agenda, when I received the agenda, it was pretty clear to me that there was going to be a request to go into closed session for the nomination or appointment of an individual employee.
The motion,
Although the agenda doesn't list what the statute is, that's what you see in the motion, that the statute's KRS 61.810 allow exemption to go into closed, exemption to the open meetings to allow a closed meeting to discuss or have anything that would lead to the appointment or discipline or of a individual employee. But this exemption wouldn't be interpreted to permit discussions of like general personnel matters. She sounded pretty specific. It was
but that's not on the agenda for the public, which is a special call meeting, Parker, that's not. Does not specifically say for a special call meeting.
I don't much believe, I think the motion itself covers the reason you're going into closed session. All the agenda should have to say is, I make a motion, we approve I make a motion that we go into closed session, is merely all I would have to say for the purpose. And then her motion would be for the, as she said it was. which
I've got
would be in
something for you to
compliance
read,
with the
Parker.
KRS. And that's what Mr. Parker said.
I'm objecting to it
based on,
it doesn't meet the criteria for KRS 6180L.
We'll call for a roll call vote then. We'll have a roll call vote. Wait a second on it.
I second her
Roll
motion.
call, see if you want to go back and executive, but that's not legal.
Closed session in November, that didn't even have a KRS.
Yeah.
Have a roll call vote. We have a motion and a second. And we'll have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Elliott,
No.
Bowyer,
I guess not.
Graham,
We're going to break the law.
Raleigh,
No.
and Dixon.
Yes.
What's a vote?
2, 4, 2,
Two.
3.
Yes, 3 no, and 1 abstain.
anybody got a motion?
I make a motion.
And I don't need a apartments are coming here Thursday. He said he would be here Thursday.
Yeah.
That's what he told me.
You don't need any of
He
these?
said to leave it with me.
Oh, okay.
There's, 4 originals. He said,
They did. Oh, I don't know.
No, I didn't hear anybody take a vote for adjournment.
Yeah, they did.
So,
Everybody said
roll
yes?
call? Everybody said, okay.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't either.
Question, I didn't hear.
I didn't either.
Oh, feel better.
Well, what we do, just